Hello, everyone. I am Brady Bridges, and I'm the broker and owner of Reside Real Estate here in Fort Worth, Texas. I want to welcome you to another episode of Real Talk with Reside Real Estate. We are a top producing team here in Fort Worth, Texas, and we want this podcast to be a resource for anyone looking to learn more about real estate and the great city of Fort Worth, Texas.
Today, I am joined by Jason Casco. He has a financial planning practice with Integrity Financial Group, and he also is a land investor. I'm actually going to hand it over to him to actually tell you kind of what he does, because he does so many different things. I really can't give him a bio.
Well, first, thanks for having me, Brady. I appreciate being on. So I guess let me start at the beginning, tell you a little bit about myself and how I got to where I'm at and into the industries that I'm in. I actually grew up kind of bouncing around, flipping houses along the way, and this is kind of where I got my first taste for real estate. My family would move in, we'd renovate a house, we'd fix it up, and about 2 years later, we'd move. So we moved a lot. So California, Oregon, Hawaii, Texas, and then I actually went out to North Carolina and even Wisconsin, ended up back in Texas.
I didn't know you had moved that much.
We moved a lot, about every 2 years. My dad was a worship leader and can work in the hospital, and so we kind of went where churches needed him, and he could kind of find work along the way. So learned a lot about real estate, the do's and don'ts along the way. Ended up playing soccer in college and really played about a year of NCAA and decided I want to focus on my degree. So I actually ended up transferring to Texas Tech. It's where I met my spouse, my wife, Stephanie, and ended up studying mechanical engineering. Went the corporate route out of school, did pretty well, but kind of got to this point where I was burning the candle at both ends. I was putting a lot of time and energy into work. And at that time, I had just had my son. And I remember coming home, and my wife and I had a discussion about time and energy spent on work. And she kind of asked me the question, why are you putting in all this time, energy, and effort? And my response was, for you guys. And she said, I don't think that's right. So I kind of took a step back and thought about it for a minute. And basically what she said was, if it was for family, that would correlate to time with family.
Yeah, I think it's an easy thing for us to justify that in our minds. You're blowing and going. You don't really think about the time. You're just going out trying to make money to support your family, but you're not with your family.
Exactly right. Yeah. So I looked at that and I took a step back, and it was a little bit of a gut punch, but I said, you know what, you're absolutely right. I want to figure out a way to do this so that I can have the flexibility to be around family more, to be around you more, to be around our son, and now I've got 2 kiddos, so it's even more important. So I left the corporate world in beginning of 2020 to go start my financial planning practice. I already had experience in the space. I had a technical analysis company in membership that I ran, so I could analyze markets really well. Half my day, I felt like, was spent talking about finance in the office anyway, building people's portfolios, that sort of thing. And so I think it was a natural progression to jump into that. So that's how I kind of got into the financial planning arena. And then from there, I actually had a presentation that I sat in on. A partner in the planning firm kind of took me under his wing, and we sat down with a brokerage and some real estate investors. And I went to the partner and I said, hey, traditional planning doesn't make sense for these people. I don't think it actually benefits them. They're doing something unique and different. How can we help those people? And he basically said, yeah, I got this. Let me do the presentation and I'll show you. So I got introduced to this idea called infinite banking, just a way to basically save money using financial tools so you can get a rate of return on that while you use that in something else, namely real estate for the most part. So after that presentation, I said, wow, that sounds like it's for me, and started implementing it. Now the question became, for me, where do I put those dollars? I knew I wanted to do real estate. I just didn't know what aspect of real estate I wanted to do. So I thought about single family, and candidly, I got a bad taste in my mouth with the single family space, because when my family lived in Hawaii, they actually worked their way to 2 homes. And one of those was a rental, and granted, looking back and understanding landlord laws and what states favor who.
Yeah.
There's a lot I could unpack here, but basically they got put into a bad situation where family proved they couldn't pay, court ruled in the renter's favor, and my parents are now out 2 mortgages and put in a tough spot.
Yeah.
So that kind of put a bad taste in my mouth for me personally, and being a landlord, I just didn't want to do it. So I kind of passed over single family, and I said, okay, what about multifamily? I think that's a great space. it is so hyper competitive here in Fort Worth. I wanted to be in my own backyard, which made it limited, to be fair.
And those deals are just impossible to find. And, the cap rates aren't good enough right now, and even just banks won't even touch them.
No, that's exactly right. So, unless I was going to go grind and find some kind of burr investment type flip stuff, it was difficult, especially with my day-to-day. So I probably passed over land 2 or 3 different times. And the reason I passed over it as an asset class is I had heard all the negative sides of things. It's not liquid, it can't cash flow, there's no return in it, it barely grows. And then on the flip side of that, I'm a skeptic at heart. I heard all these people going, well, the return in land is insane. It can return, hundreds of % and it can do all this stuff. And I was just like, there's no way that's true.
Yeah.
It's garbage. It's a guru lie. So I kind of passed over it. But I kind of found myself stuck. It's like, well, I don't know where to put my dollars. So I still remember the Spotify, the Spotify wrapper at the end of the year, it gives you the highlights of what you listen to. So in 2020, I listened to 16,000 minutes of podcasts.
I don't think I've ever listened to that podcast.
That's a lot of minutes. So, I'd go on my workout in the mornings and I would listen, and then I would listen in the afternoon.
So what were you listening to?
So literally all of that was either financial or real estate related. And the vast majority of it was land related. And so by the end of 2020, I said, okay, I get the gist of how that market works. I want to test this out. So
did Stephanie had her license at the time, right?
She did.
That was before Carter? Was that?
This is, so as far as where to put the dollars in investing, that was after we moved to Fort Worth. And this is end of 2020, kind of going to the end of 2020. I was like, okay, I spent all this time doing research. I need to take action.
Yeah.
So I followed this super basic method. There's these kind of cheaper properties in New Mexico in the mountains. I knew the area well because West Texas likes to go up to Ruidoso and to that area, and kind of that's their playground in the winter. And basically just pulled a list and sent a bunch of offers out, 300 offers, which looking back, this should not have worked, but I ended up getting 3 deals back. And it was people who had owned property out there forever. They had gotten it for, a couple $100. And so I, back 10, 15 years ago. And so I came in and basically doubled what they paid for it. And they were happy to get rid of it because they had forgotten about it. They're paying taxes this whole time. So I got my first 3 deals out there, and they're small. It was, the first 2, I think, was buy for 180, sell for 1,000, just doing better marketing and getting in front of the right people. And the second one was about $34, sell for 1,200.
So let's hold off there.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I wanted to bring you in is I've had, that my family is in single family investment.
Yep.
I have a lot of clients that want to buy duplex multifamily. This is something that my dad was doing. He was buying parcels. That's one of the reasons I got into real estate is my dad was buying parcels of land, and he was going and taking, 50 acres and doing some splitting up, owner, finance, or sell.
Yes.
So whenever Stephanie told me you were doing this, it was really interesting to me because you don't see a lot of, I know you probably know a ton of people doing it, but I don't know that many people doing it. But when you talk to me and explain it, it's really interesting. So I thought it'd be really valuable to these people and these investors that we have to know that there's other options than having to be a landlord. Right? They can put their money to work in something and maybe turn it over a little quicker than they actually, it's not the same play, but it's, to me, it's a lot safer than trading the market, or which you're in that industry too. So let's go into your first deals. So you've been in multi-state. So lead back into your first deals that you were talking about.
Yeah. So, they were small. It was, buy for about 200 to 400, double your money type deals. People are just happy to get rid of it because they had forgotten it. They were never going to visit it. It was out there. And so they're happy to get rid of it at a discount. But I did those deals, and then I ran into a new problem.
How did you pick the states?
So in this instance, I had picked it just because my wife's family being from Midland and knowing other families in Midland, they all went to that area. Okay. So I knew that I basically had a built-in market of people in West Texas who wanted land out there, but didn't necessarily know how to get it or that sort of thing. So in this case, it was a knowledge thing. But I ran into a problem that if I wanted it to be a side hustle where I could produce the amount of income I wanted to produce, I would have to do hundreds of those deals a year. Right. So I was thinking through that process, and this is when COVID was happening, and I happened to meet a neighbor. We're now good friends and business partners, but he had a rental portfolio. And he said, hey, Jason, this is getting really difficult for me to find rentals even at a good return, at a good cap rate. But I see what you're doing with land. Can you do that in Fort Worth? And then I've got building plans that I can bring this builder, and we can do it my dollars in will be way less, my yield will go way up, my rent will be much better. I was like, well, I've only done this over here. Let's give it a go. This is an urban market. It's more competitive. I don't know that will work the same. But we sent out about 1,800 offers and we got 3 deals back here in Fort Worth. And
1,800 offers.
1,800 offers, yep.
So how are you writing all these offers? Is there somebody that does this, a company that writes these offers for you?
We do it all ourselves. So we'll pull data and
it's like autofill?
Autofills, trying to run comps in the area based on the percent of what we think we can offer after improvements.
I can't imagine manually writing.
It's a lot. I mean, at our peak, we're doing 6,000 offers a month, over $30 million of offers going out. So it's kind of crazy.
Is that hoping they all accept? Or
no, I mean, this isn't for everybody. We're real clear. If I'm paying market value, unless I'm doing a subdivider, there's a clear play for me to make improvements. Really, we're selling ease, right? It's a contract. You get exactly what I say you get. We cover all the costs. And so that comes at to leave a little bit of a gap for us to market or make improvements and still make money.
I mean, you're a business, right?
We are.
Yeah.
But yeah, our first Fort Worth deal ended up going really, really well. And that kind of launched my Texas-based business. So kind of like you mentioned, though, there's multiple ways to do this. And my business has expanded now. It's not just a flip of infill lots or that sort of thing. There's more rural acreage. You can take 100 acres and you can force appreciation by cutting it up. I guess what people don't understand about this asset class is it's kind of the opposite of a house. So when you think of a house, the larger the house, the nicer the house, the higher the dollar per square foot. And land is really the opposite. The larger the acreage, the lower the dollar per acre. The reason is just cash liquidity buying pool. The person who can afford it.
There's only so many people that can buy a $5 million ranch.
Exactly right.
I mean, you have to split them up.
Yes. Yeah. So how you do that is you cut it up, and hopefully you do it in a responsible way, because you realize that when you do subdivisions and things like that, that may be long lasting, maybe forever. So I take that with immense responsibility. But land is one of the unique assets that you can be able to even go buy 100 acres at market value and cut it up into 10-acre tracts, and people will go live the dream of having their own parcel and live in the country and get that feeling. I feel like there's an innate desire for that in Texas.
So when you were first getting started, how did you determine the type of properties you were going to go after? So obviously now you're probably looking at bigger pieces than you were before. You brought other people in. You guys are, the play now for you is buying and subdividing. That's your main play now, right?
That's the largest volume of dollars, I would say. So I'm in several subdivides right now. We still continue to flip properties as well. It's really a balance. But as far as selection,
so I go back to somebody that maybe is interested in this, and they have, $500,000. How did you? And that may not be enough. I don't know but what would you say was kind of your parameters starting out if you wanted to maybe think about doing land investing?
Yeah. So I was just going to shoot your shot, right? We would take every property that would meet basic criteria. Does it have access to utilities, or can it get it? Is it buildable? Is it hopefully in an area of growth or desirability? I don't want to just buy desert squares and sell junk land. I want to sell high quality assets to high quality people and put that dream in reach. I think, I was saying earlier that there's an innate nature of people in Texas that want land. They want that little bit of country that they own.
Everybody outside of Texas thinks we all own land.
Well, it's huge, right? I mean, we've over 254 counties, hundreds of thousands of acres. In fact, there's a ranch for sale right now. I was looking the other day. It's 444,000 acres for sale in West Texas.
Wow.
That's half the state of Rhode Island.
That's crazy.
And that's just one ranch that's for sale.
How much is that?
That one, I think, was in the 200 millions.
Oh, yeah. Y'all need to go after that one.
Yeah, that'd be nice to have that kind of cash. But, you mentioned how much cash you need to do this. And I would tell you, similar to what people understand about single family and multifamily, if you can find a good deal, you can find funding. This is a lesson that I think a lot of people take a long time to learn in this industry. But, if you find a good piece of property, you just don't have the cash, you can always come to someone like me, or there's other people in this industry that can help partner and fund and take that stuff down, as long as the dollars make sense. Mm-hmm. And candidly, you don't even need cash to do this, right? We actually do this today. You could go look at on-market deals in areas where there's a good enough spread between, say, a 10-acre and a 50 or 100-acre tract. You may be able to go make your offers just on stuff that's on the market they're already interested in selling. And it's possible that a lot of these tracts are sitting longer and longer. Some of that is just poor marketing. Some of that is poor pricing. That's probably another misunderstanding that people have that I see and that leads to a lot of deals for us is these on-market deals where someone who doesn't necessarily specialize in land or run the comps and pay attention to details. In other words, they may list a 100-acre tract at the same dollar per acre as a 5-acre in town.
It's going to be high.
And yeah, so the person, the broker that did that or the agent that did that is, they've kind of set themselves up for failure because they've set an expectation with that client now, and now that property sits and sits and sits.
So do you have obviously, you guys have your buy box, right? So for anybody that doesn't know, a buy box is what he was talking about with the specific criteria. Everything has to meet. Anything within that buy box, they're open to talking and buying. It happens in single family, multifamily, big investment groups all have their buy box that they'll buy in. How are you finding these properties? Obviously you're sending out offers. Those are all off-market properties you're sending out to. Mm-hmm. How many are you finding on-market versus off-market?
Yeah, so you're more likely going to find the subdivides on market than a flip, right? Those flips are a lot easier to price because a 10-acre, you can just compare to 10-acre tracts. When you get into larger acreage sizes, it's hard to find like-for-like comps.
Mm-hmm. Because they're not sold very often.
Right. Well, and even the ones that are sold, they're not necessarily comparable. I'll give you an example that I was looking at a property the other day that's listed at $4 million. The only thing that was close, and it was like 300 something acres. And the only thing that was close to that dollar per acre was like in town with utilities and all this stuff. But they just saw that the range had sold and they trying to match it to this one that's out in the country with none of that stuff. And so sometimes that works, right? Sometimes you get a guy from somewhere like California where prices are through the roof and they just see a low price and they'll come buy it. But that's kind of the exception, not the rule.
Yeah. But as far as you're not seeing that as much right now.
We see it every now and then some of these developers will come in and they're just, honestly, I can't and won't compete with them because they're trying to operate on like a 10% profit margin, and all it takes is one mistake to blow that whole thing up. That happened recently where I had to walk away from a deal where someone's like, oh yeah, somebody else offered me this if you can match that. And I was like, if I match that and I make one mistake.
I think that's good advice because I think a lot of people that want to get into investing, they have to know it's really exciting. Like your first deals, you can't get emotional about it. Like it has to be about the numbers.
Yes.
Because I've seen it just with some investors I have, like you especially when the bidding was really high on like single family stuff. And I'm like, you do not need to go higher. There'll be another one, but they get tied into the emotion of
that eBay effect, right? You want to win.
Yeah. So I think that's why it's like even good deals you have to walk away from sometimes.
My life, a lot of it is in a spreadsheet, right? And there's extra circumstances that we look at, but a lot of it is looking at the spreadsheet and what makes sense. And I would tell anybody that I'm looking to purchase land from, hey, my offer may not make sense for you, but I have to run it based on my costs and what I can do and the margin of safety. Sometimes I can get you exactly the dollar amount that you want. Sometimes I can't. Sometimes I can get you more. My goal is to pay you as much.
You might not always be the best buyer for them.
Right. Well, we've accepted this mentality of, hey, I want to leave somebody in the best spot possible. And so I tell them, hey, I understand what you want. You got all the time in the world. If that's the case, I'm just not a good fit for you based on what I can do. Here, let me introduce you to a broker who I think may be able to get you that dollar amount. Right. And so little things like that, not everything has to be a deal. Not everyone is the perfect buyer. But if you leave people in a better spot, look at.
Well, especially if a lot of these land deals, I'm sure they're, like you said, they're probably people who've owned this land for a long time. So if you go and have an interaction like that and you say, hey, I can't get there, but, I wish you the best and have a good relationship, they might refer you to somebody else that's in a situation that does need your help and needs to get out, or, someone passes away and the family needs to liquidate that property.
Yeah. That's generally that's happened with referrals to other family members, that sort of thing. I don't want to skip over. You had mentioned how we do the marketing piece. So I guess let me touch on that briefly, that there's lots of ways to do this.
Y'all do it at such a scale. So
we do. And that's where, so most of our stuff is direct mail. We started texting campaigns. We don't really do cold calling, but I feel like a lot of the traditional wholesaling model is starting to come into land now. I don't know that that'll necessarily work at the same effect, just because the typical demographic of someone who sat on land for 10 or 20 years has a bunch of built-in equity is not necessarily someone who is wanting to have a cold call or a respond to text.
Yeah, they're not reading their text messages.
No, I mean, we've had deals where we had one individual that he literally had a landline. He goes, I don't have an email. I don't have a fax.
You have to come
physically mail it to me, and I'll physically mail it back to you. You can call my landline between 5 and 7 p.m. on Tuesday and Thursday type person. And, it's guys like that have been sitting on it. They're more than happy to liquidate it at a price that makes sense for them and us because they want to move quick. They want to take that cash and go do something fun with it or, do things with their family and that sort of thing.
So we talked to Steven on the team. He does a lot of the farm and ranch stuff. How do you determine a fair price of the land, both as the buyer and when you're going to sell? Like, are you having an agent run comps for you when you go and do the flip side on the sale, or are you guys doing that all internally yourself? Is Stephanie involved helping you guys out with that?
She's more involved now than she was, and I was kind of kicking myself for a while because I hadn't even considered that, right? Texas is a non-disclosure state, which is why a lot of land investors actually stay out of Texas because they have no idea. The $1 million listing that switched from listed to sold, did it sell at $1 million? Did it sell at 800? Did it sell at 1.4? We have no idea. I think Texas is ingenious for this because I think they've made agents invaluable to be able to pull the actual data from MLS. So traditionally, the way that we had done it was we had just done pricing based on those comps that had shown, not necessarily knowing exact dollars, but figuring it'd be close enough. Yeah. We ran our business and we did just fine doing that. There was a few deals that got a little iffy, but our percentages on returns and the leverage that we use with lenders and everything, we have more than a safety net that we still made money in every deal, but knowing what I know now, especially on these bigger deals, it's great because I can come to an agent and say, I'm looking at 500 acres and they're listed at this. Can you actually give me real comps in this area to make sure that I'm not overpaying? Fair market value is interesting with land.
So like with 500 acres, are you taking that and you're subdividing that, right?
If it's 500 acres, it's not a flip. That's going to be a subdivide or some kind of value add.
So like how small, sorry, I'm just curious here. So 500 acres, are you going down to 1 acre lots? Are you going to 5 acre lots? How do you determine what you're going to put in there?
Yeah, so I don't.
Is it based off those comps?
Yeah, a little bit. I don't want to play the game of necessarily residential subdivides. I've got a deal going now, subdividing Granbury, that is like that. It's 2 acre tracts.
Or is it more like small ranchette type properties you're trying to do?
That's what I prefer. And the reason is in Texas, the rules are very favorable for that. You get outside city limits, you're dealing directly with a county. Typically, as long as you stay above 10 acres, the process is relatively easy and straightforward. You don't have to go through city planning and zoning, all this other stuff. Typically, it's maybe you're talking with the county and it's just a couple handshakes and you sign an application and they approve it. Or it could be you're before a judge and you're just explaining what you're doing. But the process is a lot simpler, a lot cheaper. And you're getting people. I don't necessarily like the idea of taking a 100-acre ranch and cutting it up into 1 acre tracts. I get that in the city.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, but also like a lot of these ranches are legacy and they want people to enjoy the land, and to cut it up so small in those areas in a lot of ways that they don't want that. In fact, the Granbury subdivider was a unique one because he was uniquely selling to us because of what we were doing, and he wanted everyone to enjoy it, but not be so small that it was, this crazy subdivision, but large enough that people could enjoy their little plot on the same land that he grew up. So like that was
it's interesting the shift you've seen on just the development side, how it went really hard into these really small lots, like, going up more towards Keller. Why settlement now, like everybody's like, I guess through COVID, you saw everybody kind of making a shift back to like 1 acre lots, especially when you got out, like in town, it's already done. But just interesting that's, to me, like an acre lot sounds like a nightmare because I don't want to mow or do the work.
Well, it's also hard because it's based on utilities, right? Texas law in most places, and people don't necessarily understand this either, but our laws are basically stacked, right? So if it's in the city, based on city law, if the city doesn't have a law about it, you go to the county standard. If the county doesn't have a standard, you go to the state standard. But in general, Texas works this way that if you need a well and septic, the smallest you can go down to is 2 acres, unless the county or the city says differently. Okay. You got water and you need septic, you can go down to 1 acre, some places half an acre. So a lot of that is determined, and you talked a little bit about criteria of what we go after, understanding where those water lines are, understanding what can be developed, and the infrastructure in place. It would put a bad taste in everyone's mouth and just be bad business to go cut up into a bunch of 2 acre lots where there is no well water and expect everyone to drill a well. That's not going to end well for anybody.
So obviously, all this because you've learned from stuff, man. So, like, obviously you've had a lot of good deals. Tell me about some of your nightmare Like if you had a nightmare deal,
You know, we've had some that have not gone the way that we would have liked. I have thankfully
your learning experience.
Yes. Yeah. So typically, man, I'm selling out, and granted 2020 and 2021 were kind of unicorn years. I was out of inventory constantly and having to get new properties. So that when that shifted in 2022 and things cooled a little bit, there's one property in particular that took me the longest I've ever held the property. Is this one. It was 9 months. And I went against some of the common rules that I had just because the market was so hot. I figured it would go so quick. Now we buy it at a margin, and we have margins of safety built in with leverage. We buy things to protect our downside. But like that one, for example, I thought was going to go for 30 grand more than it did. Now we're still going to walk away. We're still going to make a profit. And with leverage, like our ROI ended up being fantastic. But that's one where,
And this is property you didn't touch it, right? Did you do any improvement?
This one had some junk on it that we got cleaned up and cleared off.
It's just crazy to me that like you talk to these house builders and they have to go put 80 grand, 100 grand into a house, and you're like, oh, we just go clean up some stuff and then we sell it for more money.
Well, as someone in real estate, I think you'll understand this, right? People have a lack of vision or creativity.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard this exact conversation from a real estate agent before. They went in, they showed a house to a couple, and the couple raves about the house. It was amazing. They loved the layout, the bedrooms, all the stuff. They go, great. You ready to put an offer? They go, no. And the confused agent goes, well, why? And they go, I didn't like the color of the paint in the kitchen. Right? Something so simple that can be changed, but they have no creativity or vision. Yes, but my point is this. Imagine that for a house and how common that is. You know how common that is.
Yeah.
Now apply that to an asset like land, where you're going to roll up. Maybe there's no driveway and it's trees and it's thick, and people go, well, I don't understand. I couldn't sell my land. I couldn't do this. And it's like, okay, well, you have to create the vision for them. That's a lot harder with land. It takes really good marketing. It takes maybe a driveway and a culvert put in or clearing trees. And I'll give you another example. A deal we did in Oklahoma with a friend of mine. The property was probably worth $60,000. He was able to go get it for $45 just because it had a little bit of a ditch and it was so thick you couldn't even walk through the trees. He spent $6,500 putting in a culvert, getting the drainage pipe in there, and clearing 2.5, 3 acres of trees. And that agent was able to sell it for $92,000.
Really?
So it's that kind of thing. Like, people lack the vision, but if you understand that and you have the right team in place and you do the right marketing and you can create that for people, there's so much value that can be added onto properties like that individual would never have had that ability to do that. He didn't know it. He doesn't understand it. He didn't have the team in place to go do it. If he did, he probably.
And I've assumed, a lot of times when I've done land situations, a lot of times these landowners, they're rich in land, but they're not rich in necessarily assets. Like, they can't spend the cash to actually fix something.
Dirt rich and cash poor.
Yeah.
Yep. That's a common trait.
I've seen that. I had a couple of big deals that it was that exact situation. Their family had passed down land for years and years, and they own a $1.4 million piece of land in Aledo, but they can't spend any money to do any work because they just don't have any cash.
Right.
Man, you just dished. I didn't even have to ask a question. You just dished out like every single thing that was on here. One thing I'm curious about, so it was super hot, obviously the past few years. Steph's an agent. You've been doing this. What are the shifts you've seen? One, interest rates are higher, right? So, and I'm sure if you send out that many offers, you're probably getting more response than you ever have if you're still doing it at that scale. So how are y'all adjusting your business to make sure, like, you don't want to get too many deals, right? Do you want to, I don't know, like, how are you seeing the shift, and how has it impacted how y'all are doing things from finance perspective and like on the number of deals you buy?
Yeah, it's a good question. So yeah, as the market cooled, we started building inventory, and I think some people might panic with that. A lot of our deals are funded through private money, lines of credit, that sorts of thing, where we have a good rate. So I'm willing to sit on things. But markets have shifted, which has shifted our buying criteria. How far out from a major metro you go? What is the desirability of the area? Is there actually other development? Is it in a path of growth? That sort of thing. So yeah, that has shifted. And we look back at our data, say over the last year, we'll go, okay, what markets did we excel in? And which ones did we not? And now we can take that information and go and apply it, right? What was hot a year ago, it may not be hot today, maybe worse, or it could be hotter, right? So we like to.
Are you seeing, the real estate side of thing, like single family home, possibly on a drop that kind of flattened? Are you seeing the same thing in the land side, or have you seen like big drops just because the drive for those type of properties back in the heat?
Yeah, I would say it's held its value. It just hasn't gone up much more this year.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, yeah, like we saw a big jump in 2021, and then 2022, a lot of people tried to push it a little bit further because they thought it was a competitive market and we had just gotten out of it.
Yeah.
So it cooled. And I'm sure it's just like housing. You get these people on the tail end of things that are like, oh, I saw this stuff happening. Now is the time, and it's too late to get that kind of pricing. They need to be brought back to earth with realistic.
Y'all probably run into that all the time. Sellers saw what their neighbor's land sold for 2 years ago, and you're like, it's just not there. It's not there anymore.
Yeah, it's hard. Well, and it's hard to go to a rancher and explain, Jim Bob's ranch down the street sold in the peak of 2020 at, $30,000 an acre, and now nothing is selling north of 22. Then, well, that guy got that, and I'm like, at the time that was the market demand. I can't meet the past market demand. Yeah, I can meet what it is today. And the other issue is, you have agents that will list these properties. It still is mind-boggling. If you go on Lands of Texas or landsamerica.com today and you bring up $1 million listings, how many of them are like drive-by iPhone photos that are still blurry, or a picture of a buck off the trail cam? It's just mind-blowing. And they tell these poor people, hey, I can get you this dollar per acre, and it's that kind of marketing after the market is cooled on top of that. And so you get this compilation of all these things going wrong. Honestly, I think of everything is cyclical. I don't care if it's financial markets or real estate, whatever it is. I learned a lot of this from technical analysis of financial markets. Everything shifts. And so I think when we look back at the last 2 years, we were in a place where it was harder to acquire properties, but much easier to sell. And now I think we're starting to see the shift where we're getting higher response rates on offers and things like that. I think we're entering a market cycle, it's just my opinion, that it's going to be a lot more common to get deals and a lot harder to sell. And one of the ways you can fix that is phenomenal marketing in front of the right buyers. And this is where standout agents are going to do exceptionally well, and subpar ones are going to struggle.
Well, Jason, thank you for all that info. One of the things I've asked everybody is, what do you love about Fort Worth? So everybody's come in here, obviously we're trying to make this a real estate Fort Worth centric podcast. So you guys have been here for a few years. What do you guys love about being here?
Yeah, so there's two major things I love about Fort Worth. Number one is the culture. Having been at Texas Tech and in West Texas, I love that there is that West Texas blue collar kind of Southern feel here. This is still a place where a handshake means a good deal. Like, your word is your bond. You mean what you say, and there is that strong work ethic and culture here, and I love that. I'm not a big fan of big cities. I've never fit in well because of the mentality and the culture that goes with that. But I feel like Fort Worth has a fantastic cultural balance of that. The other thing I love about Fort Worth is it is still a place where you can have all the city amenities and the restaurants and the entertainment. But if you want a piece of the country, you can be within a 10 or 15 minute drive of all those things. You can live on your 1, 2, 10, 20 acre track, and you can still get the feel of Texas country and your horses, whatever else you want to do, and still have the amenities and everything that comes with that.
No.
I'd love that.
Stephanie said it feels like a little Lubbock, or a big Lubbock to her.
It does. It's like a big city, West Texas, without the haboobs and the dust storms and everything else that goes on up there.
Jason, if anybody has any questions or wants to get a hold of you, learn more, how can they reach you?
Yeah, so I'm going to say social media with a caveat. There is an exact person with my exact name who is a professional soccer player from Central America. That is not me. I did play soccer, so there's a blend of stuff that pops up. But typically most of my social media is just Jason Casco, whether that's Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. My website is more for the financial planning side, but jasoncasco.com. You can reach out that way as well.
Cool. Guys, this was another episode of Real Talk with Reside. Jason, again, thank you for coming in. If we can be a resource for you about learning more about Fort Worth or real estate, please reach out. Thank you.